2, 1, go!
3, 2, 1, Ghost. Hey, everybody. Welcome to 3, 2, 1, Ghost. I'm your Scare B&B host with a silent G. Don't worry, I didn't forget. I'm Kyle. It's good to have you all around, as always. I'm joined by my confidant, my pal, my co-host. Or am I your co-host? It's an equal situation. Hey,
we're each other's co-hosts.
Yeah. I want to be better. I want to be better than the men in this film. And I'm making that very clear that I respect you as an equal partner.
It's like we're equals.
Very clear off the top here. Not that this movie does not make me defensive whatsoever, because I think it says a lot of really great things in an interesting way. We are talking about Zach Cregger's 2022 film Barbarian. This is now the most recent movie we've talked about, beating would it be Midsummer or Ready or Not? Did Ready or Not come out later that year? It may have.
I don't remember.
So I want to say Midsummer was earlier, but whatever. So yeah, 2022, just last year.
Look at us in the present.
I know. Look at us. I forgot that stupid saying. I don't know. It's like, that's why they call it the gift, or no, it's a gift. That's why they.
Gosh.
I don't know.
You're on one tonight. Like,
oh god. Okay. Next.
Scare B&B.
I thought that was great.
Sure.
Welcome to 3, 2, 1, Ghost. We're talking about the 2022 film Barbarian, our most recent movie we've talked about. But gosh, it probably came out just about a year ago from when we were recording this. Well, I guess a little bit later. I think it was late September, I think. But gosh, actually no, early September. What am I kidding? I've got the Wikipedia right up here in front of me. September 9th. Now, did you see this movie in theaters?
No. This is now my memory working better than yours for the first time ever. You had already seen this movie and you were in San Diego and we watched it. So you got the pleasure of watching me watch it for the first time, which I think is like a very special thing about this movie, like watching someone else watch it.
Do y'all have, and this is just a general ask to the audience, I don't know, I feel like everybody's got that friend that like loves watching movies they've already seen with you because they want to just like sit and just like watch your reaction. And you know what? I can be that dude sometimes.
Yeah, I'm totally that person. I will rewatch a movie 1,000 times to see different people's reactions. And this movie is definitely a very special, like, first time watch. I'd even say the second watch is fun because you kind of like look for things. And then this time being the third time I watched it, I was definitely watching the clock, but I have mostly good things to say about it. But yeah, we watched this together. Then I was logged into your HBO Max for months and just rode that on and on as long as I could. Just Max. It was HBO Max at the time.
Yeah. I like the idea of just adding Max back into things. It's a very, early 90s situation. Like, just add Max to it. It sounds dope as hell. Whether you had like the Max from Saved by the Bell, whether you had Mighty Max. I don't know if you ever played with Mighty Maxes, or Polly Pockets. They both are in their same ecosphere.
Love Polly Pocket.
I think they're both great. I love the concept. But yeah, I was really, I had the privilege of watching this movie. I don't know. I was at my brother's bachelor party. And I was there, it was in Palm Springs, and I stayed a day late and got a hotel for myself. I'm the kind of person when I vacation, if I get I even did this for my own bachelor party. I got a hotel room the night after, just to be by myself and just decompress from social interactions. it's I'm a very sociable person. I just need a lot of recoup
Oh yeah,
time.
me too. I think we both fit into the category of extroverted introverts, right?
Yeah. Like geez. And of course, as we're however many episodes into just 2 hour blocks of us just talking.
Not to mention, not to mention the time that we take to watch the movies as well. So, I mean, you're looking at least a 4 hour commitment each week of not hanging out with anybody in person.
Hmm. So I was in Palm Springs for an extra night. So yeah, this must have been early September. And one thing I remember, maybe it was one of my other brothers that was telling me about this, and I think there was maybe some advertising around it where it was like, if you have the ability and the interest in watching this movie, don't look at any of
Yeah.
the posters, don't watch the trailer, just go in just fresh
Hmm.
and just see where the shit takes you. And I had that opportunity. I didn't usually things just tend to get spoiled in some
Yeah.
regard, so it's like hard to really go in completely
The
fresh to
internet.
things like that. But I did know that at least like Bill Skarsgård was in it, and I know it was about a woman getting an Airbnb, and then that was kind of it.
See, I think one random person that I talked to, it wasn't you, like I knew nothing about it except for a woman goes to an Airbnb and there's already someone there. That was all I knew. I didn't know anyone who was in it. I didn't know Justin Long was in it. So when we watched it together, like when I saw Justin Long on screen, I was like, what a treat. Like
Always
always
a
a
treat
treat.
when Justin Long shows up.
Yeah, so it was a complete surprise for me. And yeah, this movie was wildly successful. Like people fucking love this movie. That seems to be the general consensus.
I am one of them. I did like it.
I'm not saying I don't love it. I have a few critiques and as always, but I do think this is a great movie. Do I think 93% on Rotten Tomatoes is a percentage that some of my favorite movies should have? Yeah. Yeah, I fucking do. 93% is high. That is high praise. Um,
Yeah.
and a 71% audience score. I wrote down all this shit. And a seven out of 10 on IMDb. I don't know how IMDb is like making these ratings. I feel like it's always quite lower.
Yeah, it's always like, people will like, rage
Yeah,
review and review bomb stuff. So you can never really take any internet anything at first glance. And I think like what doesn't IMDb still think like The Dark Knight is like the best movie ever
probably.
made, like by their
Probably.
aggregator, which is some I'm sorry, y'all. It's some bullshit. That movie has like not aged very well. That shit's just like
I
a
don't
straight
remember it
up.
very well, but I remember liking it when I watched it. I'll be honest.
Mm, it's very. I forget how conservative those movies are.
Oh yeah, I feel like that's a Batman thing and a Superman. Like maybe a DC
Yeah,
thing. Maybe they're like the conservative superhero, like whereas like your Marvel's a little bit more hip and current.
I guess they do make like Spider-Man like poor and a lot,
Yeah.
and that's why no one likes Iron Man because he's the rich
Yeah.
asshole. But so yeah, I think see, I would say a 71's pretty low.
For the audience score, I was
Yeah.
actually surprised by that. Um, especially I have not talked to anyone that has seen this movie and said like I didn't really care for it. I think it gets pretty high praise. And I don't know, did you look up budget versus box office?
Yeah, it was pretty low
Yeah.
budget. Yeah, it basically made 10
Yeah.
times what it made, 4 million budget, made
Hmm.
45 worldwide,
That's
which is,
impressive.
hey
Yeah.
shit, that's good for a
Yeah.
horror movie. But that's why I'm confident they're going to make horror movies forever because you can make that shit for very cheap and it'll generally make a lot of money.
Be in one house with one actor, two actors, and there you go. You can make a movie and make millions. So good for them.
Do you
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask real quick, do you have any interesting Airbnb stories?
Hmm. No, I've never had any bad or weird experiences at an Airbnb ever. Um, it's always been fine. But I will say, I've now after staying in enough of them, fucking Airbnb. I would much rather be in a hotel. I want to do my own dishes. I don't want to make my bed. Like, I don't want to feel like an impolite guest. So in a hotel, I could just be a shitty person and feel fine about it. But in an Airbnb, I'm like sitting there like scrubbing my forks. Like, like that's not a vacation. Um, so I'm not into it anymore.
I absolutely hear you. And just like, you know, it was it was good and novel and worked for people for a minute until inevitably, you know, it just becomes, just corrupted. And
Yeah.
then you have, yeah, just this situation of just, just paying however much to be in like a shitty space. And it has,
Hmm.
often, a list of like, yeah, rules you have to follow, as well as chores you need to complete, and like a very,
And then cleaning fees on top of that. There have been places I looked at and I was like, this is a decent price. And it's like a $150 cleaning fee. I'm like, who the fuck is cleaning this place? Mr. Clean himself? Because
but
like
no, it's you.
it's me. Yeah. And then someone else is coming to like, no, this is wild. Look, now you're gonna have me talk about how much I pissed at Airbnb for the next hour.
We don't need their sponsorship. They can get the hell out.
No, they can fuck off. How about
Yeah.
that,
Well,
Airbnb?
and then of course, if you want to get into whole like, its place in, the housing crisis, and, people's availability, to find affordable housing,
Hmm.
geez, it's a lot of properties are just bought
Yeah.
up and just become Airbnbs, and they can usually take a hit on that kind of shit. And it's, though I hear that like finally it's kind of taken a turn, and Airbnb shit isn't as profitable as it used to be, which makes sense. That bubble would need to
Yeah.
kind of burst eventually, but still it's like, but then you're left with all of this livable housing space that it's just, I don't know. I remember
Yeah.
too, it's
There's your
just,
horror movie.
well, and it's just so strange because I remember one time, I think actually this was in Detroit, where Barbarian takes place, and we were at, it was, yeah, just some Airbnb, and it was an apartment in this apartment building that was like kind of like in the outskirts of the city, but like it wasn't necessarily like, I don't know, like a bad part of town or anything. But um we show up, we have to meet some like random person who like lets us in, into the building, and then gives us a key into the room. And then I notice like, we go to open the room, and there's like an eviction notice, like a notice to vacate, from just like X a months of whatever of
Oh
not
my gosh.
paying. And I remember the second day, like we were in there, and we just, and there was just like, a pound on the door, and I was like, I don't want to answer it.
What?
Like, and it was just such a strange situation, and I was just like really, and just kind of just like, I'm sure probably someone is, I don't know, doing whatever with that apartment, and just like
Yeah.
probably just making whatever money it can back on Airbnb costs, whatever we were paying for it. I can't remember, but and then just like what, they get the eviction notice or they get evicted. Like, I mean, I'm just thinking like, fuck, if whoever's name's on that property, like an eviction notice, like that's, or getting an eviction, sorry, going through that whole
Yeah.
process, like that can ruin you, I think, or at least if you're, well, unless you're wealthy. So it's probably just wealthy people just not caring, and who knows. But so it just feels weird to just be a part of that commerce, right? So I don't know. So it's, those are my feelings. And also, what was so great is I was telling you, I stayed an extra day in Palm Springs, and I stayed at a hotel, and it felt really good
Yeah.
walking out of that hotel and walking over to the movie theater. Of course, this was September, so I stopped by the Spirit Halloween that was on the way,
Good job.
and took a look. So I saw it was there, and then I got in and out on the way back. But yeah, just it felt very nice watching this movie and then having a hotel room to come back to.
Oh, hell yeah.
Rather than like if I'd gotten
No
an
hidden
Airbnb.
basements.
Yeah, right. And it's pretty funny. And I know, I guess it was only a few weeks ago, talking about, hotel horror in 1408. But yeah, I have
Hmm.
I feel a safety in hotels that
Oh,
as
yeah.
spooky as hotels can be, famous, awful things have happened in hotels, but in movies
Yeah.
and in real life. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, after seeing this movie, it does nothing to make me feel any better about Airbnbs.
Yeah, the other thing about Airbnbs that I think are just naturally creepy, like let's say there's not someone already there in the Airbnb, there's still someone who has a key to that place always, who lives there. So who's to say at 3 a.m. while you're sleeping, this person isn't like, you know what, I'm just gonna enter my house. Like I own this house. I just think about that creeps me out. Like when I'm in a hotel room, they can still get into the hotel room, yes, but you always have that extra lock, that little like latch thing that makes me feel like that extra bit of safeness. And maybe the Airbnb sometimes will have those too, but like, people know how to get into their own houses. So that always is a weird situation. I never even had comprehended that someone would be like already there, like that it would be double booked before having seen this movie.
So that's kind of where our movie starts, where our lead character Tess um, rolls up, pouring rain, middle of the night, can't see any other houses on this block, which we'll see later on. But she goes to this house in this neighborhood that she booked on Airbnb. Um, we never find out who Marcus is, the person calling her.
I love that. I wrote a note of that because I was like, it's such a good like way to distract you. Like, who's Marcus? Why does he keep calling? Is he gonna show up later? Like, did he set this whole situation up? Like, I was very like red flags when I saw Marcus and she's like, oh, like stop. Um, I thought he was gonna come back.
I've got a flimsy theory
Oh, let's
which
hear
I
it.
can connect. Well, I'll say now and kind of connect it later, but it's just this movie has so many, or not so many, but it does present different versions of toxic masculinity and male buffoonery and shitheadedness. And so I just kind of told myself in my head, maybe Marcus is like the ex that just like won't fucking stop, antagonizing her, harassing her, like maybe it's again, I don't know. I think something like that. It can be whatever I want because it doesn't explain
Yeah,
it.
it can be whatever you want. I'm like, he called, but I mean, from our perspective as an audience, Marcus called twice back to
Yeah.
back, which I call everyone twice back to back if I'm calling them because I'm like, oh, their phone probably just wasn't near them or they didn't get it in time. So I'll call them back. So I'm like, you know what? Marcus might be a shitty ex, but at the same time, I feel for him because we've all been there where we call someone too much when we probably shouldn't. So, I don't know anything about Marcus. I'm not gonna give him low marks.
Yeah, for brief
Marcus
periods
is.
for brief periods of time, I probably have been accused of being that desperate ex. It's okay.
Oh yeah,
We all
absolutely. We all
we,
have.
we all grow and learn, and I hope
Yeah.
Marcus has too.
If anything, if you're not stopping doing it for the harassment aspect, stop doing it for your own self-respect.
Right, exactly. So she rolls up and finds out that I do like, just some cute things like, just like trying to find the fucking email because I've done that before.
Mm-hmm.
Getting the one digit wrong on unlocking the
Yeah.
lockbox, just little cute things like that. I'm just like, oh yeah, I've certainly done that before.
They did a good job though, like in the dark that I noticed. So there's that like silver car that's parked next door. In the dark, it looks like a normal car parked. So you don't feel that isolation of like all the houses being run down and there being no people around. Like I was like, well, like there's a neighbor. Like when I had first seen this movie, that car was there. And then the next morning when she's actually out there, you can see that car is fucking busted in the front. Like it's not driving anywhere for the longest time. So I like that they kind of that I don't know if it was intended, but from a darkness perspective, I was like, oh, like there's neighbors. So I didn't even like think of that. But although she should have given probably a more like quick look around than she did. Yeah, a little bit more of a scan.
Well, especially they always dress up those Airbnb photos, right? To make it look
Yeah, like you're not seeing the neighbors. Yeah, it's like a super duper close up of the house. Yeah.
exactly. So, you know, so she rolls up and realizes the keys aren't there and somebody's already in that fucking house. Knocks on the
Mm-hmm.
door, and then our fuck, what's his name?
Bill
Keith?
Skarsgård.
Yeah,
Oh, Keith in the movie. Keith in the
both.
movie.
Either
Yeah,
one.
he can be both. We can switch back and forth. We
Yeah.
will.
So Bill answers the door. This movie is, and then this it just enters into a scene here. Well, of course, you know, they have the conversation. Looks like he booked it on like Home Away. She booked it on Airbnb.
Which I've never even heard of.
I think like Verbo's like the like extra wealthy one
Mm,
version of it, and then I think there's some other ones, so maybe even more so, where you could just rent mansions. I don't know,
wow.
but double booked. Fun little incident, right? I do like the shot of, you know, when it gives you the title, of course, that side shot of her, like, okay, and she agrees to step inside.
And you see the wall, like her walking past like the threshold of the front of the door
It's like,
or
okay,
whatever it is.
we knew shit's gonna get really fucking bad the second she walks into there, but I
Yeah.
do like um that nice little transition there. And
Yeah.
geez, I think I'm forgetting what I was gonna say. But gosh, I just feel like at this point in the movie, it you could like just make a couple tweaks. You wouldn't even have to change any of the dialogue whatsoever, and make the music just a little bit more like uplifting. And you
Yeah.
really have,
It's a romantic comedy.
yeah, you
Yeah.
absolutely have a romantic
Yeah.
comedy. In any other situation, you have, you know,
People have made trailers for that.
have
Like
they?
pretend trailers. They exist. Yeah, they're quite good. There's also a trailer from Justin Long's perspective of the movie.
Oh,
So
geez.
there's different trailers for this, but like they're not like made by the creator, like they're fan made and they're all so good.
We'll have to share them if
Yeah.
we can
I'll
link
I'll
them
find I'll
easy.
find them. I'll find them and share them. I so because I have a lot of like critiques on these characters, but I want to make it very clear that I love the first act of this movie, which is actually 40 minutes of the movie. So I want to make that very clear before I get into all my shit talking, because I actually think it's perfect. And I think it should have just been like, it could have been a perfect short film. And I know that that's how it was written originally, but I really think it's absolutely perfect, like the way the suspense is built and all the things. But I think you and I are going to disagree on many things about this first act. I have
I love
a
it.
hunch.
I do like, again, I do like that romantic comedy piece. I think that,
Oh
you know,
yeah.
especially when you have, you know, like a young, attractive woman. I don't know where she's coming from, but she is coming to a larger metropolitan city,
Hmm.
having like a weird, time of 1408 again, you know, like a weird, quirky kind of fun, like romantic comedy kind of
Hmm.
job. It's like, oh, I'm doing, you know, I'm a documentarian
Yeah.
researcher on
Things that don't
jazz
seem like real
music.
jobs.
Yeah, and then it just, oh, who knew? Just funny enough,
Yeah.
he was part of this and this and this, and he'd be a
Yeah.
great person to interview. And it's so fun to fall in love under the strangest circumstances that, you know, we can all relate to, because we've all gone in Airbnbs. There was a lot of, you know, people have, I don't know, but
Did,
yeah.
did you look up the ages of these two actors?
No, is there like a
I accidentally did because I looked at when they show his ID, when they show Keith's ID, it showed the birth date. His birth year is 1988. And I was like, what? And so I looked up Bill Skarsgård and I was like, oh, at the time, like of this, like, I mean, now he would be what? He'd be 35.
Yep.
So he would be 30, like 33 probably when they were filming this. And then Georgina Campbell, who plays Tess, is 31. I thought both of these people were in their mid late 20s. Like I really thought they were in their mid 20s. So already I was like, what is happening here? Like this is, I don't know why that shocked me so, but I like, I don't know, just something about their characters like read like younger to me, and they both look very young and very hot. Like they're both super attractive people. So I was really thrown off by their ages because I was like, I just don't know.
I hate to break it to you. I think it's because we're getting older.
I think that's what it is
So
too.
everybody in their 20s, I'm like, you're
They're
a child.
teenagers. Yeah.
You are a child. So
Um, but okay, and I think what upset me more so is I looked that up really early on in the movie. So then all of the things that happened made me feel even more upset because I was like, oh, I can forgive Tess for going in that house if she is a little bit younger and a little bit like less careful. But like as a 31-year-old woman, I would not have walked in that house. I would have driven either all the way home or into the city and slept in my fucking car. Like I'm not sleeping in that house with that man I don't know. Who's 6'4", by the way. Like
6'4".
it's not happening. As hot as he
Yeah,
is.
I don't know if I would have just driven around like Detroit somewhere. Because I mean,
Oh. Even home.
yeah,
Even go home. Like,
honestly, back to the airport and be
yeah.
like, I'm just gonna sleep in my car in the airport parking garage.
That looked like it was her car though. It didn't look like a rental. It looked pretty lived in.
Then, geez, then if she was able to drive, well, I don't know. Who knows? We don't know how far
I
she drove.
I don't I did they ever say where she drove from?
No, I don't think so. And then the
Damn.
challenge is that also now, now I will question some of her decision making only when she
Yeah.
comes in. Well, there's a few times, but when she comes in and she calls one place, she only calls one hotel.
And then he's like, "Oh, there's a convention." And you're just going to take his word for it?
Right, and that's where I'm just like, so it's clearly, at least in some ways, like setting it up that like this dude is a creep, like, and he is, like it can be both, um, just in a different way, but yeah, I thought that was interesting, and then also, yeah, I mean, do you want to talk about Bill Skarsgård?
Yeah. I want to know why you think he's a creep.
Well, so like I was saying, I think this movie and it's like, and I'm not saying that it's like taking like the deepest, most adventurous, bravest take on men,
Mhm.
especially men, and their interactions with women, right?
Mhm.
But I do think that each of the men in this movie, I mean, even throw in Marcus with my made up little mini half a backstory, is that I do think it shows different degrees of male privilege and entitlement, even when it's like not necessarily being wielded for malicious intent, right? So like I think of, you
Mhm.
know, Marcus just being a pest. But again, I'm projecting a lot on Marcus. Poor Marcus.
You are projecting a lot on Marcus. We know nothing about him. Like he's not even a character in this movie. And you're just like, you know
and
what? Fuck Marcus. Fuck his family.
and I don't even need Marcus to make my point. I've got enough. But you've got Bill Skarsgård, who, I mean, I don't know, has like said shit I've said a lot in the
Mhm.
past, like ways that
Like what?
it's little ways, it's like, first him just trying to kind of speak to it very clearly, like this idea of, you know, so you first have this like weird shit that's like always like under this guise of like chivalry or like old timey, like, well, he even says like, well, my if my mother taught me anything, it's like, a young lady doesn't, sleep on the couch and this and
Mhm.
this and this, or I'm sorry, it's just how I was raised. I think like there's like little things like that. I think also there is that assuming nature that he knows he's an okay guy, or he tells himself he's like an okay
Mhm.
guy. And I'm sure he's not like, yeah, he's not like maliciously, like he's not like Justin
Mhm.
Long, or at least
Yeah,
to
who's yeah,
for what we're
that's a
provided with,
completely different situation.
completely next level kind of thing. But
Hmm.
just this idea, like I think even when she asks, like, can you pull up your phone reservation? He
Oh,
pushes
that's when he's
back.
at his shittiest. That is his absolute shittiest thing that he does and says 100%, because he says, here, I wrote it down. Just in case I'm some weirdo, he says, and I'm like, yeah,
You are some weirdo.
yeah, just in case you're some weirdo. Yeah, like that is the shittiest thing that he says. Like he shouldn't have given her pushback. It also, that was one of the things that bothered me this watch, because I was like, if you're going to go the route of like giving this character the like, oh, well, my mom taught me never to do this, and like, who would I be if I didn't carry your bags and things like that, but like it seems out of character for him to say that, and that's the first like real like reaction that he gives to her. So like it's this like I'm being questioned, and like I know I'm a nice guy, and I that's his, I think that's his like peak shittiness right there.
Yeah. And it's just, and I think because it's kind of rolled in, it's like, I think it was like, oh, half kind of chivalrous, polite thing. And then she asks about this, and then he's shitty about it. And then it's another weird, like, oh, my mom raised me this and this kind of polite thing. It's when he's bringing in, he insists on trying to grab her bags, and she says, like, no, I got it. And then he
Mhm.
tries to, instead of just saying, I'm sorry, I should have asked if I could grab your bags. It was this defense immediately, and I think it's this, and I know it's I think it's really subtle. I've just been thinking about this a lot, and I think with this movie there are just little things like that where I'm like, I think I'm intentionally just trying to, be in this cute romantic comedy situation that this guy's found himself in. He's found himself
Mhm.
in that because he knows he's not a murderer.
Mhm.
She doesn't know that she's in a fun romantic comedy situation yet because he could still murder her. The stats generally, unfortunately back up that would be kind of a likely situation. and
Yeah.
and I think this, how he's put upon about like having to check, bring up his phone reservation, being like, haven't I, he feels like he's done enough already.
No, that's like right in the beginning. He's done nothing at that point. He literally just told her to come inside. Yeah, like he only let her come inside, and then she said she was going to use the bathroom. And
Yeah.
then she says, "Do you mind like pulling up that reservation?" So it's like it's one of the first things that happens, like, or that he says in a, yeah, in that like particular tone, and then it feels so like out of character from there. Like, okay, what's interesting to me about this, so I wrote down like all the things that Keith Keith does. And like boo on Zach Cregger, maybe I didn't search hard enough. Like, let's keep in mind this is written by a man.
Yep.
So let's keep that in mind. I watched at least 5 interviews today to try to find what his like commentary is on these like 3 different men, that we're kind of looking at, Marcus excluded. Um, and he really doesn't say much. He, in one interview, he even says like, "Oh, I wasn't trying to make some big like social commentary." And I'm like, wow, really? Because it fucking feels that way, like watching this film. Like maybe I was giving him way more credit. I actually had never he'd never been on my radar before this, because I'd never watched The Whitest Kids You Know, um, which is, I guess, what he's most known for. Um, but so I wrote down some of the things. Okay, so you've got Keith insists on letting her take the bed because his mom would be so upset if he had let a young lady sleep on the couch. And now knowing that she's 31, I'm like, okay, calm down with young lady. Um,
Again, if he like, again, the young lady thing, I think that's still very
yeah, like that's,
dismissive.
and it like there's your one. Okay, then he insists on grabbing the bag. He insists on making tea, so he makes the tea even though she says she doesn't want the tea. And then he makes that big speech before opening the wine. Um, and later on, when things escalate, he tells Tess that she's safe and that she needs to calm down. So my two biggest triggering things here are the like, just in case I'm some big weirdo, and the you're safe, you need to calm down. I will tell you something right now. Whenever someone tells me that I need to calm down, I fucking lose my shit. I go from a 9 to a 12. Like, don't ever, 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 ever tell anyone to calm down, really. But like, I especially take it hard. So, okay, here's my thing. In this situation, and I'm speaking from my personal experience, I am not speaking for all women. I want to make that very clear. My husband and I talked about this extensively, and he made it very clear that 95% of people, not women, people in general, he says, would not agree with my feelings on this situation. First things first, you're not staying in the house. You're not staying in the house. You're not staying with this random guy, but we're already here. We're in the house. If he insists on letting me take the bed and be in a room that has a locked door, absolutely let me have the bed, take the couch. I don't care if your mom said to do it. I don't care if your heart said to do it. I don't care if Jiminy Cricket told you to do it. Like, I deserve the room because it is safer in my mind. Like, and again, husband said, you would want to be trapped in a locked room? And I'm like, absolutely.
It's got a window.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's a way out. And you know what? If you're caught off guard in the middle of the night, like woken up by a man, like he's going to be able to overpower you. We should probably give a trigger warning for sexual assault, rape, harassment, all the things like this movie tackles. And it just gets more and more severe as we go on. But Keith is in a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. And I know that's like the male argument of like, well, if I'm super nice and chivalry is not okay, but then if I don't get her bag, it's not okay. Yes, carry my bag. Yes, give me the room. Don't make me tea. Like, if you made it, I'm just not going to drink it. I appreciated his whole like speech about the wine and opening it. I'm still probably not going to drink it. I want my wits about me. I don't want to be intoxicated, whether it's poisoned or not. But like in my mind, I'm like, you know what, Keith, fine. If we made it that far into the bedroom situation, I'll tell you right now, I would have slept with him. Honestly, they had a great connection. He's hot. Let's go for it. That's my not my closing statement, but important to note.
Okay. So I think also even just shit that just really off, even when he goes, Tess, that's a pretty name. It's so off-putting.
Yeah.
It's all creepy. And then
So this is the thing though. This is the thing. You chose to be in this house with a man that you've never met. All of these things are going to happen. It in my mind, I'm like, you don't know this person at all. Like you, Kyle, may not have said those things or done those things, but she doesn't know the difference between you and Keith. Like, so you're in a situation where like all the things that Keith is doing are dumb, but they're not like there's no danger there. Like that's the important thing to note. Like even it like to me, him letting me sleep in the bedroom and getting my bags are not red flags of danger, if that makes sense.
I mean, I think already just being in that house, that's all the danger you need.
Yeah, that's super dangerous.
But I don't think he's doing any favors to just make himself less like a danger or of a threat.
By doing the stupid chivalry thing though.
Well, it's just funny because it's like I think that was like like yeah, no, I think he was attempting to make her feel comfortable, but
Yeah.
it's again, that's why like I don't know. I just maybe I'm
But see, what I'm saying is that wouldn't make me feel more uncomfortable. Like I would be just as neutrally uncomfortable whether or not he got my bags or offered me the room, if that makes sense.
I think it's just such, again, I think it's just kind of very common things for men to lean on, in these sorts of situations. Like,
Yeah.
because ultimately the goal is like, she's like, oh God, I just want to survive the night. He's like,
Yeah.
oh damn, this is a great situation for me now.
Yeah.
Because, and again, just like how it just that pause of like not wanting to leave the room, and of
Mm-hmm.
course we don't know what this relationship is to poor Marcus. So you know what? Justice for Marcus.
Yeah. Like
So
maybe they're just having a fight. Like we don't even know. Like, are they broken up? Are they together? We don't know. But
right.
and that's
And
like
I did
that's
think
the
that it was sorry, you go ahead.
that's the thing. Like for with Keith and this whole situation, they even pointed out like in their conversation, like she says that if she was already in the Airbnb, like no fucking way I wouldn't have let you in. Like anyone wouldn't have. But that doesn't make me think that Tess is any more smart because you're still in that house. Like I I feel for her because I understand how important the interview is. And like I have done really stupid things like for my work life. And so like I feel for her on that account, but at the same time, like, you know what, girl, maybe you're gonna have a night where you're up all night and you've got this interview in the morning, but at least you're not in the house with a complete stranger that, you have no idea who this person is. Um,
It's
maybe
just when
they're not even Keith. Maybe that's a completely different person. He murdered him already and now is just in this house.
she saw the ID. That looks pretty
I know
close.
she did see the ID. Yeah, she did see the
But
ID.
it's when she comes out of the bathroom or the shower or whatever, and he's got the wine ready and he's like giving that whole like, I just made a note. I was like, man, that is a fine line between being flirty and being assuring that you're not going to murder them.
Yeah.
It's like he was really juggling that both like really in the same sentence from word to word. Like, I
Yeah.
want to be cute, I'm not going to murder you. And I think, in what other context on a first date or a first meeting over a bottle of wine would that work? When he's like,
Well,
oh, don't worry, I'm not going to murder you. Has anyone brought that up on a first date?
but like that's the thing. Like that wouldn't happen if you and this is why people are attacked by people they trust or like, that they are on dates with because it's not just some random person you ran into and they're like, "Hey, you want to come in and have a bottle of wine?" You're just like, "Absolutely not. Why would I do that?" But if you go over to someone's house for the first time, even if you've been on a couple dates, you're running the risk that they could slip something in your drink. Absolutely. Like with or without the speech, but you're gonna trust them to pour you a drink because you've met this person before. Whereas with Keith, she's like, I don't know you. I'm not gonna drink that wine.
And be like, I'm going
You
to
know
bed.
what I mean?
I'm going and locking my door right now and just going to
Yeah, like I
bed
would have
now.
just been like, I'm going to bed, like with sheets or no.
Yeah,
Like,
don't
I
need
was
to
I was about
just
to sleep in my car, so like
um did you think for at any moment after the reveal that he is of interest for this documentary that she's applying for, and he brings up and they get in the conversation about music and this and this and
mhm.
this, from that point on, did you think that, oh, okay, he's not, did you feel like kind of disarmed in that moment? Did
No,
you feel like,
actually, I felt okay. It was conflicting feelings because it seems like way too big of a coincidence that those two things would be aligned, that he would be like the founder of whatever this thing is that she just happens to be talking on this rare documentary that nobody's seen. Like that actually made me think like, was he stalking her? Was he like, looking into her and finding information and finding a way to just make himself sound, to disarm her a little bit? Like, was this all an act? But by the time, like once she disarms herself and she's like now acting like it's a first date and we're in complete romantic comedy mode, that's where like I'm like, wait, no, this is a trick. You're trying to get the audience to let their guard down. Because when he does the duvet trick, I straight up thought he was going to trap her with that duvet. Did you think that?
rawr? No, I did not think
Yeah.
that at all. I did not think that.
I was like, I did not like this duvet situation. And that was a red flag. I don't like that I can't see your face. But
Gosh. And I think at some other point where he was just like, yeah, it's like, do I look like some kind of monster? And I'm like, bro,
when does he
watch
say
yourself,
that?
be
When they're
cool.
I remember him saying that. I feel like that's like a throwback to him being Pennywise.
Yeah, right.
Is that's when they're talking on the oh, because she says she wouldn't have let him in. And he says, do I look like some kind of monster?
And it's like,
Um,
well, yeah. And I think that's, and again, it just kind of underscores that, like, this, yeah, just the belligerent way in which men enter spaces and not
well,
consider, you
and
know what I
that's
mean?
yeah, like this is the thing. Do I think that that makes Bill Skarsgård a bad guy? Absolutely not.
No.
I think that his character is perfectly dumb. He is exactly the type of like he is most I'd say like he's like most good guys. I'm giving air quotes here. Like he's like most good guys where they're like doing all the right things. How come people are getting mad at me? Like that type of good guy where like they say stupid shit like young lady and tell you your name is pretty, like things like that. And you're like stuff like that where you're just like, I don't care to hear that.
Young lady's bad, but if he had said "milady," she should have just started fucking running.
Yes, absolutely. But like, and that's the thing. Like, he was just polite enough. Like, literally, like I would have been down to clown. Oh, because he's Pennywise. Um,
Mm, okay.
but I liked that one. Um, when it comes down to it, when you're comparing, because in my mind, this movie breaks it into three different types of men, or three different men that are varying levels of men. So you've got Bill Skarsgård, which is just your stupid guy. Then you've got Justin Long, who's a rapist who thinks that he's a good guy. So we'll put it like that bluntly. And then you've got what's his name? Frank.
Yeah.
Frank, who is a straight up serial rapist, serial killer, like monster, just like complete, like anyone would agree this person is complete trash, even Justin Long, who like is also trash. Like just they're on a spectrum of trash. So would I put Bill Skarsgård on that spectrum of trash? No, I would not. Absolutely not.
Well, when you've got Justin Long and Frank, right? Then
Yes.
yeah.
And
But
I'm not grading on a curve here. Like
but I
it,
do think it's important to include those behaviors from Bill Skarsgård because I think it just shows, like, I don't know. I think it shows
it's
multiple layers of, like, how, I don't know, again, just like that kind of, those like toxic masculine traits really can infect in those spaces too. And even just his, maybe
you
it's a
would call
more,
his traits toxic masculinity. I think of a whole nother like Justin Long to me is toxically masculine. Like that's like I feel like he says that fucking bitch I think four times about that woman.
uses a lot of
Um
unfortunate language. Yeah.
yes, yeah, we'll talk about that, which I think is great for his character because it really shows you who he is.
Mhm.
Um but I in my mind like those are all things that can be corrected and I've seen be corrected through male friends that I have. Like some men are great. Yeah, like here's Kyle pointed to himself, everyone, just for the record, because he thinks
I'm
he's perfect.
I'm patting myself on the shoulders over here.
Yes, absolutely. No, but it's
Hardly.
true. Like there are some men you literally just need to tell them once, don't call women young lady. And they're like, oh shit, like I had no idea because I'm a man and I've just been charging through life thinking everything was all good. Like, and once they hear it, they don't do it again. But then you have men that are like, really, really, I'm the bad guy because I called her young lady. Like, so we don't know what kind of guy Keith is. It seems like he's very like, I don't know. I feel like he's like from the Midwest. And like his mom like taught him like, well, this is how you treat a lady and you pull out her chair and like you hold the door and walk on the outside of her when you're on the sidewalk. Like, and so he's thinking like my mom told me how to treat women. Like I know all the right things to do. So there's this like I feel like Keith is the type that, like, if let's say him and Tess made it out of this situation fine and they started dating, she would have fixed him and made him just like a 10 out of 10. I absolutely believe that.
Okay. I'm gonna put we'll see. I'll put a pin in that. But just to, fast forward a little bit past, I'm sorry, the boring parts. She goes to her job interview and comes back. I'm
Yeah.
just like, oh, okay, yeah, have that scene, fine, cool.
Yeah.
And
I
then,
do love that woman's reaction though, where she's like, you should not be staying there.
well, you're a fucking filmmaker. Put me up in a spot. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Pay me to come to this interview.
Or
Like,
tell me if there's a
I'm
convention going on or
out of
not.
town. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, she's like, I guess there's a convention going on. And then even she's just like,
hmm
oh, okay, maybe. I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
like,
She's like, too bad, how sad.
I
Yeah.
know. Um, oh, also real quick, hey, look, I've been accused of talking in my sleep sometimes. Maybe not to the extent that Keith was
Oh my God, that was
having a
scary.
bit of an episode, but there's no need for him to be a dick about it, when she's like wakes him
I
up.
know. He's like, what the fuck?
And
Yeah.
she's like, I don't know, you're fucking screaming. What do you fucking want me to do? And my door was open, so I don't know. We just
Again, in Keith's defense, and maybe this is just going to make Joel, my husband, sound like a terrible person. When he's woken up from his sleep, worst person you've ever met. The worst person you have ever met. You wouldn't even think he was the same person. Like, he literally tells my cat to fuck off. Like, it he's terrible when he's woken up. So I'm like you woke him up in the middle of the night. Like, you don't know this girl. Like, that would throw my shit off too.
yeah, it's pretty fair. So she comes back, right? Keith's not there. But there's a note. There's a note when she leaves, so she takes the key with her. She's able to get back inside, and this is when I don't know how they went that. I don't know how they went that long without. Well, how they ran out of toilet paper that quickly,
I
but
know.
there
Was
was.
the roll like already like at its end?
I guess
Like,
so.
yeah.
So she and I also know what that's like in an Airbnb, trying to look all over the fucking place, being like, really?
They should really just put it on the back of the toilet.
I know,
Like, it should always be on the back of the toilet.
always. And she goes into the basement for the first time.
Mm,
And also the kind of repeating thing with this door that closes on its
that
own.
fucking door.
Um, and then of course, well, I spoke to it a little bit, but that overnight she realized, the door was open.
Mhm.
When she wakes up in the middle of the night, she thought it was Keith. Turns out it's
Oh
this
yeah.
monster who's roaming around the house very silently.
Oh, so silently for how like goofy she is later in the movie. But
Yeah.
the that was another interesting thing. So it that I really like about this like first act is they show every time she locks the door. They don't show her locking the door when she goes to bed, which is wild. I'm like, Tess, you've been locking the door the whole time and then you don't lock it before bedtime? She sure does the second time. But the music cue that goes when she's walking to go like down the hallway and is exploring like or down I think down into the basement is really good.
Yeah, me
Um
too. I made a note about that saying that,
yeah.
that kind of like, ambient synth kind of stuff in horror
Yeah.
movies
I
is.
love it.
See, at first I was like thinking like, is that played out? Because I hear that like all the time now, but I'm like, no, it still sounds really good.
It still sounds so good. Like I think about It Follows has a really good music.
Right. I forget the name of the person that did that. It was like a one name moniker.
I don't even know.
There you go. So she makes it back. She goes down to this basement, sees that little rope sticking out of the
Yeah,
wall.
absolutely not.
Even just for that curiosity, I'm like, I wouldn't fuck. I don't know. I wouldn't fuck with
Uh,
any of it. I don't even understand. The interview's done. Leave.
yeah,
Go
yeah.
home. Why?
Yeah, it's
Why?
the middle of the day. Why are you staying there another night? I'm assuming she paid for another night, but it's like your thing's
Doesn't
probably going to
matter.
be free because it was double booked. Like they're going to refund you.
So she goes and Yeah, I mean, I think if there are pretty clear things that would be clear indicators of this is a scary dungeon, I don't want to be in it. Um, Gosh, I think it checks all the boxes. You've got your
Hmm.
flickering fluorescent saw sort of light.
Hmm.
You have the ratty brown twin mattress on
Oh,
the thing,
ugh.
and you have basically just like she lists them. um,
Okay.
you have a bed, a camera, and a bucket, and those three
Bad
things
things.
together. Nope, nope. There's
Never should
no
be together. Never should be
never.
together. That immediately you were like, someone has been captured, someone has been tortured, someone has probably been raped. Like, all the bad things that could happen to you happen in a room with a bed, a bucket, and a camera. And there's a bloody handprint on the wall, which she doesn't even bring up. Like,
She does bring up later.
like,
It was like an extra thing when she's like she lists all the those three things, and he's like, well, let me go, I'm just gonna go down. She's like, yeah, but there was a bloody handprint, like,
oh, she does say it. I don't even
yeah,
remember her saying that. Oh goodness. Yeah.
because
Okay.
she's
So
right.
this is so funny. In in my brain, if I said that I'm bringing up my husband a lot because we had a very thorough conversation, and like, I consider him a really great guy. Like, he really has his shit together in how he treats women, how he views women, like all of these things, right? I asked him, I said, if I ran me as your wife, not some random woman that you just met, if I ran upstairs and I was like, we need to get the fuck out of here, there is a room down there that has a camera, a bed, and a bucket. What would you think of that? And he's like, camera, a bed, and a bucket. I'm like, yes. What kind of room would you think that is? And he's like someone's been captured there. I'm like, my female brain goes immediately to like a rape room. Like that, it's the video camera for me. So I said, would you need to check it out? Would you need to see it? Or would you just take my word and get the fuck out? And he's like, I would have to see it. I was shocked. I was so shocked that he said that. I'm like, no, you take my word for it and we fucking leave. When Bill Skarsgård says, like, wait for me while I go check this out, no. I'd be like, you can come with me now, or I'm going to leave by myself. Those are your options. I'm not waiting for you.
Yeah, I don't care. I'm not waiting for you.
Yeah.
There you go. I'm good.
Yeah. His reaction is that of a fool. Like, straight to the police department is where you go.
Yeah, which also is another pretty common thing is, well, generally with at least with Bill Skarsgård and Justin Long, um, often people just meet their demises by just like not fucking listening to her.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And just believing
Absolutely.
her when she fucking says something down there is terrifying. And that was even
Yeah.
before she saw the staircase go all the way down. She finds
Yeah.
that
She
out when
didn't
she goes
even
back
see
after him.
everything. Yeah.
And that's why I'm like, that's when I finally go, all right, I'm not with you when she goes down the staircase. I don't care. I'm not
I
going.
know. And you know what? The other thing, too, this was I had so many times where I was like, oh, this is it. This is when Keith is going to trap her, because I thought, it like, he's called, like, help me from down there. I'd be like, this is a fucking trap. This is a trap. He's trying to get me down in that basement and he's going to chloroform me or whatever is going to happen. There is no power on this earth that would help. I'd be like, I'll go get help, Keith. Peace out. Like, you're absolutely right. Like, you can't go down those stairs.
Even when
Mm-mm.
he finds her at the bottom, he's like, someone's down here,
Yeah.
and even when she's like, all right, let's go back this way. This is the exit. And he
Yeah.
just immediately goes, nope, this way, this way. And I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, is it you just being just an idiot, or
He said
are
that's where
you,
he said that's where it is, or where she is, where they
yeah, like,
are,
or I was thinking like even up until that point,
whoever it
like,
is.
is he trying to pull her into
Oh,
some
yes,
room
yes,
or
yes.
whatever?
Absolutely. That is exactly what I thought too. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's trying to pull her deeper down into this hallway.
But then you find out pretty quick that, what, turns out he isn't that bad a guy.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Keith got his head smashed in quite good.
always love a good skull smashing.
Ah, so good.
So good.
And he has such a good one too, because he kind of has a big head. So like it was like it was a perfect skull smashing. I felt bad for Keith, but at the same time, bro, should have believed her. Like that's your price that you paid. Like should have just listened to this woman standing in front of you. Like it guaranteed it would have been a better situation for you, even if there wasn't a monster in the basement.
Yeah.
If you would have just believed her and left, y'all could have had lunch, gone to the police department, figured shit out. It would have been great. But no, Keith's dead. He's
And that
dead.
could be a real romantic comedy situation still. It's like, wow, we made it meet each other under the strangest of circumstances. And then it gets even stranger with this sex dungeon but and
Yeah.
network. And so, but you know what we did? We
This
believed each
kidnaps-
other. We leaned on each other and we went
Yeah.
straight to someone that would support us and help us. And we
Yeah.
just left and it ended up being great. And now we have that fun story to ever just think about.
Yeah,
There you go.
never-
There's your romantic comedy.
Yeah, exactly. And like that whole first act, that's a 10 out of 10 movie for me. Five boos for that first 40 minutes. Like
One thing I did skip over is when she does come back to the house, she drives up and she is chased inside
yes.
by a man that you learn is homeless but living in the area, living over by the water tower. And like, look, I get it, but again, I don't get it. It's just with him. It's just, dude, could you have thought to just say anything else or just word it any differently than hey little girl, come out that house, hey little girl? Like,
yeah,
okay, dude, like, can you just like not
and running
people,
sprinting at her?
Like, and I get, like, in the sense where it's like, oh yeah, okay, because there's a monster in the house, but you gotta lead with that. Lead with that. Be like, there's something in that house.
Or even if you don't think that someone's going to believe something, say there's someone in that house. Like, just, you could even say, he could lie. He could fucking lie. He could be like, there's someone with a gun in that house. Like, if he would have said that to me, I would have paused. Like, I wouldn't have had to hear anything else. But honestly, I think that character is the most poorly written, because we go from being at a 10, sprinting at her, being like, little girl, come out that house, to having a completely rational conversation where he's like, well, listen, I told you not to go in there. There's monsters in there and she's not even the worst thing. And he's just very calm and lucid and chatting it up. I'm like, you went from like you're two different characters. Like he is two different characters. But like, and again, if you call an adult woman little girl, you are not going to be listened to, trusted. That person's going to keep walking and or running if you're running at them. Like, I have been called little girl as an adult, as an actual little girl. Like, and it's fucking creepy. Like, unless you're actually a child and you're like, oh, the little girl over there, that's fine. If you're a 14-year-old girl walking down the street and someone hollers at you, little girl, creepy. Don't do that. If you're listening to this and you've called a grown woman a little girl, stop it.
Yeah, I hear that. And again, regardless of the situation, you have just a dude, just all he needed to do was just
ma'am,
not be a creep. But
could have just said ma'am.
Had to be a creep and then present just as dangerous as everything else. Oh my gosh. So you do have Bill Skarsgård head getting smashed in, and then we cut over to Los Angeles, California, with a pretty interesting needle drop.
It's the transition is so good because you're like, what the fuck just happened?
It's a nice bit of levity there. Switching over, and that's a fun song by Donovan, the Ricky Tikki Tavi song. I did a little bit of reading into what that song's about. I don't know.
Yeah, what is it about?
I don't remember ever reading the Jungle Book, but there's a mongoose called Ricky Tikki Tavi that's, and Ricky Tikki, because I guess like that Ricky Tikki Tikki, I guess, is a sound that Mongeese mongooses make. Would you like to hear some mongoose facts?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
You're
got
you're
you.
prepared? Thank
Three,
goodness.
three, two, one, ghost. There's
Thank goodness.
only there's only a few, but that whole idea that like a mongoose can fight a snake, and that they
Yeah.
talk about that in the context of the song. It's like they this family befriends this mongoose, and then in turn the mongoose kills the snakes for them, and then he starts talking about just more broader things. The singer of the song, not the mongoose.
Hmm.
He's not thinking human thoughts, but we said, well, no, he's a jungle book. They talk probably. I don't know, but I digress. Oh yeah, mongoose facts. Where am I?
Yeah. Where are
Who
you
cares
going with
about
this?
yeah? Who cares about the song?
Yeah.
So mongoose. So it is
Do we know what
a.
the plural is? What the plural form of mongoose is?
We'll run it up to the research team. Um, so there's the idea that, or a common misconception, that a mongoose is not affected by, like, say, a bite from a cobra, like, or a poisonous, a snake bite.
Oh.
To which it is not true. So now maybe the effects are a little maybe lighter, possibly,
Hmm.
but really the ability for a mongoose to take down a snake is really its ninja-like reflexes, just moves like they're in the Matrix or
Does
something.
does it does whatever you read say ninja like reflexes for the mongoose?
Yes, whatever site I pulled up did say ninja-like reflexes, as well as its ability to like stiffen its fur, making it harder for the bite to like pierce like through and then into the skin. So
Oh, that makes sense.
yeah, I'm gonna leave all of this in, and
It
people just
is it that's fine. It is
yeah.
mongooses or mongeese. Both are right. I
Oh,
prefer
okay.
mongooses.
Mongoose. No, I don't know. Yeah, it's all.
Because I just think of geese.
So you've got
What
so
else?
you've got Justin Long who's singing the song, and it's a banger. And I did want to say
Mhm.
I just always appreciate parts in songs where the singer just starts talking.
Yes, me
Love it.
too. Love
You
to talk
know,
along too. Like give it just as much attitude as they do.
it's so good. I mean,
I
what
Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say whether or not it's Fred Schneider of the B-52s, or whether
Yeah.
you got Michael Stipe would do that plenty in REM, and you know what? Fuck, Taylor Swift does it quite a bit
He
herself
does
too.
do it a lot, yeah.
Two, I would say generally winning results.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, um, just wanted to just muse on that for a minute.
I love that. I was just going to say, maybe we've said this before, and earlier in this in this episode as well. Justin Long, he's playing a character that is absolutely awful, and he's still so amazing. He's so good. But fun fact, I have a fun fact.
Love it.
While I was listening to these interviews with Zach Cregger, and he was saying his like choosing of who he like casted. So like Bill Skarsgård was the obvious one because it's like he's creepy, but he's also attractive. So like people are gonna know him as Pennywise, so he's already kind of menacing, and you want to like throw the audience off, right? But he actually said the character of AJ, he originally had thought of like a big buff like frat type, like frat guy type, like a Chad kind of situation, and he was like that was who I was initially looking for. But then he thought to himself, what if it actually was like a really like sweet seeming guy like that everybody loves? And he said America's current Tom Hanks is what he was looking for, and I was like, nailed it. Like, what a perfect pick. Like, because you see Justin Long and you're like, oh, he's wonderful. He's magical. Like, he could never do anything wrong.
He does play an asshole in the most charming way in
Yeah.
everything he's in.
And that's the thing. Like, he's a perfect pick for this situation because he's in a situation where he's immediately confronted with, hey, there's been an accusation against you, and you're like, not Justin Long, like what? Like, you're so like like put off by that, but everything that he says in that conversation immediately tells me that he is guilty and is in the wrong. Like, there's so many flags of things that he says. And it's not even as simple as like him saying that fucking bitch, which he says 4 times in the movie. He refers to that girl as a fucking bitch. And on that phone call, not smart. But
Such a bad phone
he
call.
yeah, the first thing, he doesn't even address like the claims or the actress at all. He immediately starts talking about how it's going to affect the show and how it's going to affect him. Like those are his first questions, not what is she accusing? Like what is she saying? Like he immediately goes into like full selfishness. Then he doesn't even really emotionally react until the woman on the phone, which by the way, I think is his actual real life wife,
Oh.
says like, yeah, she's accusing you of rape. And then he pulls over, like, because he's like, oh shit, this is serious. But still, it's not out of guilt or feeling bad. It's out of, I'm fucked. Like that's his reaction. So I think he just did such a good job of like still seeming like funny and cutesy, and like you go back and forth of like, what is going on with this character? Like it definitely makes you feel conflicted.
when when the character was originally still supposed to be that really buff frat dude, do you know who the front runner was for that role?
It was it Zach Efron?
Zach Efron.
Yeah,
I
which I
still
think would have
think,
been great too.
yeah, it'd be different, but I still think
Yeah.
that even though he's probably 30 now, and I would still think he looks too young. I don't know.
Yeah, he looks older. He looks more older recently. I feel like he's aged a lot in the last like couple of years, but like in a good way. Um, but I think if Zach Efron was playing that character, especially because he has such a pretty, like chiseled face, like his eyes just like twinkle at you, like I would go into it being like, oh, this guy, before he even utters a word, I'd be like, this guy's a complete piece of shit. Like, obviously, he's the villain here. Whereas with Justin Long, like, I'm like questioning my whole moral compass. Like, knowing that this character is shitty, like before you even hear, more details on what actually happened and transpired, like his reaction as Justin Long makes me think like, oh man, like poor Justin Long. And I think it's meant to do that because we all know people who seem like really great people. And, like there's
Yeah.
plenty of guys out there that seem like really great guys. They're great sons, they're great brothers, they're great, friends, but like they're literally doing shit like this all the time. And so people are like, no, like they're a great guy. Like they would never do that. And it's like, no, these are different types of relationships and different types of interactions that these people are having. And you can become a different person depending on the situation that you're in. Like one aspect of your life doesn't make you a good person because you're good to someone else,
Yeah.
i.e. serial killers.
I do think that when they called him to let him know about everything that was going on, I feel like I would have led with, there's been an accusation against you. It's an article is coming out tomorrow.
Yes,
Because
start with that.
because that's what's spurring all of like the firing and all of that. Like you figure
Mm-hmm.
that out afterwards. But even then they kind of start with like well, you're not on the show anymore. Because also
Yeah,
by the
they
way this, and then by the way, and then yeah, I don't know. And then they
they
weren't
like
even going to tell
spoon
him
feed it
about,
to him.
which, I mean, I think it's, you maybe, you can project a little bit of just like, maybe, dude with his ego,
I
things
was
do
gonna
need to be
say,
spoon fed to him.
I think that was what, I mean, I think it was written that way intentionally because they're like, okay, like this is a fragile, egotistical man, and we need to present the information to him in a certain order so that he doesn't immediately hang up the phone or, not take it seriously. And I do think they did that on purpose.
Well, this fragile, egotistical man has some liquidating to do. Um, to
He
pay
sure does.
for, he's not going to have some steady. He's not going to have any steady
Those
income
legal
coming in,
bills.
and if he's going to try and launch both of those, both the
Mhm.
defense and the
I
offense.
love that his accountant like also or his wealth management person also drops him. He's like, yeah, I'm going to give you back your files. He's just like, great. What does that mean?
Yeah, it's like, nope, you're someone else is gonna be your wealth management. You're
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Um,
You won't need wealth management after this.
so it turns out he's got some properties that he rents out for Airbnbs out in Detroit.
Hmm. Guess
Guess
where?
where? So he flies out and checks out this place. Um,
Hmm.
does Yeah, I think he stops at the place first and realizes that, somebody's been there, or squatting there before he goes and meets with his friend at the bar that night, right?
Yes, he has a whole time there before he meets with his friend at the bar. So he has
Throwing her
first
shit around and yeah.
he's calling the property management and being completely like rude to her.
Mhm.
Although it is kind of gross that they wouldn't clean it until someone new like rented it. Not a fan of
Yeah.
that. Um, and then what is interesting to me, what I love is so he's having that conversation with his mom. And this is before the bar. So he has the conversation with his mom. And this conversation with his mother is so representative of Justin Long's character and the shittiness of his father as well, because she says, like, why don't you come visit us? You're only, 3 hours away. And he's like, oh no, like I've got a bunch of things I have to take care of. And she's like, well, your father would really like to see you. And he says, Dad wants to see me. Did he say that? So, okay, we're desperate for daddy's approval. That's an unhealthy father son dynamic there. The mom takes it a step further and starts defending the dad and says, well, you know how your father is. Like basically saying it's okay for him not to show emotion. Like that's who he is. And like that right there, that is fucking toxic masculinity through parenting, which is the worst. Like that can be one of the many things that can turn like young men into Justin Long. No, not Justin Long. Oh my God. I'm so sorry. I just said that. Hopefully everyone turns into Justin Long, into AJ's. Like, and I'm not saying that if you have a bad relationship with your father and he wasn't loving that you're going to turn into a rapist, but like it was very representative of also just women making excuses for men. Like she's literally in a relationship where she's making an excuse for her husband being a shitty, non-loving or like lack of emotion of a father. The other thing that is not okay about that conversation is that you've got his mom making excuses for
Hmm.
his dad being not being emotionally available and maybe not showing affection to his son or verbalizing his feelings. Like that is a whole nother level of like these relationships where the woman is taking on like all of the emotional weight of being a parent and just letting this dad like coast. And it's just a very unhealthy dynamic, and it like super super red flags. And then it of course like switches right up and his phone rings and he's like, oh, I've got to take this call, and it's his friend. And this is where like you're like, oh wow, you're a real piece of shit, because he says, what up, F word. And for the record, everyone, if we say F word, we're not talking about the word fuck, because we will use that word freely.
Yeah.
So that is like he's just in his own world where he doesn't care about anyone.
And then just admits to his friend, like, no, okay, I was a piece of
Who is the
shit.
director and writer, by
Oh,
the
was
way?
it? Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
And then only to be followed by that drunken voicemail that he leaves. It's so bad in the
Oh,
multiple calls, and then he just starts going back and forth between I'm sorry, and then I'm angry, and then fuck you. Then I'm like, oh, just talk it out. I'm sorry, and just all of this, like, just
yeah.
all up in his own feelings, and it's about him and how it's affecting him.
Mhm. Oh, it's all about him. He wants forgiveness. He wants her to tell him that it's okay, and he's totally right. Like it was consensual. Those are all the things he wants to hear to make himself feel better, not to make her feel better.
Right. And yeah, fuck him. But hey, he's still got a
Yeah.
house to sell. I did think that seeing it for the
Yeah.
first time, um, when he pulls out the when he goes downstairs, finds the dungeon, And then of course then cuts to, him Googling like, how, if basements count as like, square
At
footage,
square
and he's like
footage,
going and just like taking the measuring tape there. And
which is hilarious.
only because the bit just keeps going and going and going, and
Oh, he just keeps measuring. He's not even writing it down.
yeah.
Like, how are you keeping track of how much you've measured? But I think what's so interesting about that too is like the difference in reaction between when Tess finds that room and AJ finds that room. Because when AJ finds the room, doesn't sense any hint of danger
No.
whatsoever. Because he's not looking at it. He's looking at it as like room. It's a room with things in it. He's not even noting what the things are, what their connection to each other could mean. He's like, nope, this is more square footage in the house. Everything's good. He is a man that is charging through life with no cares in the world.
He's like the I don't know. I just sometimes feel like the dudes where I don't know, did you ever see that thing going around where like random men were like asked like if you could score a point off Serena Williams, you know, like could you do it? Could you score 1 point? And like some
Yeah.
alarming high number of men were like, yeah, I could do it. Even, which just shows again just the
Was she there and then they had to try? Because that would have been really
no,
amazing.
of course not. Because if they were ever actually put in a position where they actually had to like perform and do it,
They
I'm
would
sure they would
cower.
cower. Or the same thing, it's like a lot of men. I remember a friend asked me this once, like being like, "Do you do you think you could fly a plane? If the pilot something happened to the pilots, do you think you could confidently land a
Yeah.
plane?" And I was like, "No, absolutely." I think I did have one clarifying question where I was like, "Do I have the do I have people on the ground walking me through it?" And she goes sure.
Yeah.
And I go,
Makes sense.
still no. Still no. Absolutely not. Probably not. I don't.
You were
I
like,
think I
no,
think probably an old me
no.
probably would have had that confidence, but
Well,
not
because
anymore.
I mean, like, I don't know anything about flying planes, but the same way, like driving a car, you could tell someone how to drive a car, but there's a feeling of control that you have over the vehicle and like how hard and slow you steer the wheel and how you press down on the gas. Like if I just say press on the gas pedal, there's 100 different meanings to that it could be. Like, so you can't just tell someone, but yeah, that is a total representation of as men in general. One of the other things too that we skip past that I think becomes really apparent and relevant later in the movie is when he is talking to his friend at the bar, he says like, it did take like, yeah, we fucked and like it took some convincing. And then he says that he's very persistent, which, persistent is a word. And then moves into like, but then she came around and she was totally into it. So he's like creating this narrative and he does it later in the movie with
Yeah.
Tess, where he makes up a whole story and like he's fully bought into it because he's like he can't comprehend being a bad person. And so that's also really interesting because it shows this this like psychological flaw in someone who's done something wrong, like very wrong, and they talk their way through it until they've really built a whole narrative of like why it's okay and why they're still a good person and what they did was okay and that other people weren't hurt. Like it's and there's I mean there's different people are going to go about that or feel different ways about it, but that's what this character is doing. And I think they did a really good job of giving a lot of depth to AJ, like in that regard, like where he has a lot of just a lot of like nuance to him, where he's like this. He's a very well thought out character, I
Yeah, I
think.
think because he does it a couple times. I think, at least off the top of my head, there's, after he, fucking shoots Tess, right?
Mhm.
And they go back to, and we'll be jumping around a little bit. I
Yeah.
So going over when they're talking with the guy over there by the water tower, and even then he is still
Hmm.
being like, well, I, well. but I didn't see you, and this and this and this and this, and just trying to really deflate it and making sure, like, it wasn't because he was an asshole,
And
but
he
then still
says,
tries to like make it about like, no, I'm gonna make this right. I'm a good person. I'm gonna make this right. And I'm like,
yeah,
what are you talking about
you're
anymore?
not
And then
though.
also, it's still about,
Yeah.
regardless, he is still not even the hero of his own story, but he perceives himself as, the hero in any context that he just finds himself in a little bit, or like
Mhm.
as the lead in his own situation. So it's even still, I mean, so you would think shooting her would be enough of an extreme example of him trying to like, make it okay for himself, but then only to just push her, throw her off a fucking water tower just minutes
I
later,
know.
and to
And
still
yeah, and
say,
he even
you fell,
says
you slipped.
he's a good, yeah, when he's in that little cave area, like in the water tower, he says like he's a good person who did a bad thing, but then he like still even like circles back. But yeah, when he pushes her off, he's like, I had to, like, like buying time. And then all of a sudden it's like, but you fell. Like I didn't push you. And he literally changes the story, which is exactly what that motherfucker did with that girl when she needed some convincing. Like, and he was persistent. Like he's literally just making up a story that makes him feel better about himself, that makes him not the guilty party, and is just this great guy that's being misunderstood,
I think kind
you know?
of interestingly, to a lesser extent, the guy living by the water tower, even his last words were dismissive, maybe not to her, but well, to them a little bit, and
Yeah.
then also to this monster, by saying like, oh,
Yeah.
I've been here for a decade, she's never coming here. And then
She's never
and then
coming here.
immediately comes in, rips off his arm, starts beating
Yeah.
him with it. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
Which is
which it just
great.
shows like, dude, she was like, she could have come in whenever she fucking wanted. She just didn't fucking feel like it,
Yeah.
dude.
She just didn't have she didn't have a
Yeah.
reason.
So don't
Yeah.
pretend like you're fucking special and you're the one. Even so, it's just kind of interesting to think about. So like, it's almost like they all die
No,
by their own
yeah,
hubris, lack
there's
of
this
trust. I
like,
don't know, all of it.
there's a lot of there's a lot of little things in the movie that like this third watch I noticed, like when when he even walks into the house and he sees the chair holding the door, he's like, what the fuck? Like, what is this? And just moves it. Let's think for a minute, maybe someone's down there. He sleeps overnight before he even checks it.
Yeah.
A woman would never. You would see that chair there and be like, there's might be someone down there. I should probably check. Like, you wouldn't sleep overnight without checking. Like,
Yeah.
that is like an arrogance and just a pompousness that like, only a man can have, really. Sorry, Kyle.
No, I don't take it personally. I stopped taking that personally long ago.
That's
Yeah.
funny.
Oh my gosh. So
When he says I'm a man, I'll fuck you up. He actually says I'm a
I
man.
know. I know this little with his little
Yeah.
flashlight and his knife, or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
When of course he finds, the woman down there. Um do we want to talk about the I guess the creature in this creature feature?
Oh yeah. I think we need to.
Um my real main thing is, I mean, I think like the makeup and the effects look great. My I guess my only gentle pushback would be, is that what happens when you make a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy? Like, is there like a bell curve where it's
Okay.
like, because I think of like that episode of 30 Rock with Paul Rubens as the that I forget what country he was the leader of, but it was just, he was like, they even assumed that they insinuate he was very inbred, so he can like barely move. He looks like he's 60, but he's actually like 13 years old, but I'm thinking like, is there like a bell curve where it just like starts to turn up, or then you just get super strong and 8 feet tall in a
Okay.
situation like that?
I have so many thoughts about this and so many notes about this. So, okay, let's wrap up AJ. AJ gets trapped with
Yeah.
Tess and gets a tit shoved in his mouth because he did not listen to this woman when she said, drink from that bottle. You're going to drink from that bottle with the hair on it,
I,
which is such a
oh,
nice
I know
touch.
with the hairs and stuff. It's so good.
Oh,
Allegedly,
oh, so
according to
gross.
Justin Long, in an interview, a scene that was shot but then cut was when he is not taking the bottle, or maybe when he's not taking the nipple later. She, I
Yeah.
think, ultimately turns back to the nipple, but does feeds him like a baby bird. Takes like a rat and bites off
Oh,
the head and
no.
chews it and like tries to spit it into his mouth, you know. And I guess they were like,
Oh,
maybe that's going
God.
a little too far. We'll just,
I would
I
have
know, I
loved
would have loved
it.
it too.
I would have been into it. So okay, so he gets trapped with Tess. So then then the movie brings you into the 80s, or late 70s. Um, and you meet Frank. Now, this is where the inbreeding situation gets real weird for me. Okay. He buys a VHS. The earliest, I looked this shit up, the earliest it could have been was 1975, because that is when VHS became a thing. And that's not even when people had it in their homes and all of those
Mm-hmm.
things. So we're in 2022. Let's even give the break, let's give the movie an extra break and or no, actually, it would be worse. Take a year back. So you've got 22 years plus 25 years. That's 48 years. How many generations of women could have been trapped in this basement that are of age, like not of age? I'm sure he didn't care about that, but are of an age that they could actually give birth. Okay. You're looking at four tops,
I mean, if yeah, I
right?
guess so. Didn't really bother
So
with the math.
you're You mean to tell me that royal dynasties were doing this shit inbreeding for centuries? Centuries, maybe add in a cousin here or there to, like thin out the bloodline a little bit. And they couldn't get past four generations without creating a mutant monster? I don't think so. That is unreal to me. And also another thing that totally ruins that whole story is the man that lives in the water tower says that woman has been in there for 40 years and that's all she knows. So was she the first baby to be born down there and she looks like that? That makes no sense. None of that makes
No,
sense.
none of that makes sense to me. Um,
And that's where this third act slash, I shouldn't even say third act, the last 20 minutes, I'm
it
out.
yeah, I hear you. I do. I mean, I don't know. I do like the design of
She's a
the woman.
monster. I don't even like her design. I feel like I've seen her
Yeah,
before. I don't know. I think did you watch that terrible movie, Mama?
yeah. Sorry. First, I thought you were talking about the
Where the
movie.
where the monster like raises the two little
Yeah,
girls.
I thought you were talking about the movie Ma with
It
Octavia Spencer.
No, that's
That's a
great
good one.
too. We could talk about that one day. Um, so that bothers me a little bit, but even still, like I don't find her particularly scary. I find her to be gross and fun, which if that was the intention, then great. I do think she's gross and fun. Um, I don't know that you'd have yellow eyes from living underground her whole life. Like she has made it outside, which we know, at least at night. Um, would your eyes be yellow? Probably not.
Um, Couple
Um,
interesting things about this.
yeah,
Um, Sometimes I think it's a challenge when you use real life history as a backdrop for a horror film. I think
yeah.
sometimes it works. I think in this case it works. I mean, in the sense where, and by history I mean, um, in Detroit in late 70s and into the 80s,
Mhm.
when black families were moving into the suburbs and causing an exodus of white folk that were in the suburbs.
Mhm.
And thus, the attention, to the suburbs, because it wasn't predominantly white anymore, dwindled over X amount of years, and then showing kind of after,
Yeah.
generation and only a couple generations removed, you see just the how dilapidated those neighborhoods are, just how, just that where the most impoverished neighborhoods became. Especially when you
Mm-hmm.
see in the flashback with the 80s just how it looks, just like almost looks like a, not far off from like
Looks like
the
the neighborhood
Edward
in Edward
Scissorhands. Thank
Scissorhands.
you. That was it. I kept wanting to
Yeah.
say Nightmare Before Christmas, but that's not it.
It's literally all I could think about was that it totally looks like Edward Scissorhands
Right.
neighborhood.
And and then it shows it like, okay, so that, I guess if there's a neighborhood where someone could be kidnapping people left and right and keeping them in his sex dungeons, and you know I guess
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you're in a neighborhood that gets overlooked and continues to get overlooked more and more and more. So he was able to just keep up that ruse. Now I think, and again, I'm like, it works well, or at least provides like maybe that extra little bit of like the how behind it or the why behind it. But I think like
Mm-hmm.
maybe just comparing it to like a more like egregious example is, you remember, what was it? It was at the third Conjuring movie, The Devil Made Me Do It, where like it
Mm-hmm.
really takes like, a really heartbreaking and tragic murder and like tries to be like, ooh, but maybe it was ghosts, maybe it was the devil.
It was
And I
spooky.
was like, no, I think, yeah, just
It was murder.
yeah, I was like, did anyone ask like the victim's family, like,
Oh, they just put out a whole ass documentary about that. I saw it pop up on one of the streaming services.
it's like, sorry, your tragedy is now part of the Conjuring extended universe.
Yeah,
So just
exactly.
know that your tragedy exists in the same breath as the Nun too. That's a prequel of a prequel to your. So it's so
Yes.
bad.
Okay, so something I just thought about that makes me go a little bit easier on the inbreeding situation. Not the
Okay.
concept, like the history of it. The history of it is when he captures that woman, when you see him like capturing the woman, there's already someone screaming in the basement before he captures her. So he may have been doing that before 1980.
Probably.
So that gives you more generations of the inbreeding. So,
Yeah.
you know, take your add or subtract a couple decades, I
Hmm.
guess. Yeah.
And I think the other part that was, like I said, it's kind of interesting to me. Like I said, it isn't necessarily super in depth, but the all the uses and the plays off the word barbarian in this movie.
Yeah.
You have, I think you're more just kind of modern understanding of barbarian, which is just this term of like, someone who is uncivilized, someone who,
Mm-hmm.
is, again, just more, just maybe like brutal, more like that propensity for, maybe like violence or narrow thinking, I don't know. And then you have, like a barbarian in the sense of like that, you think of like a real, like a violent male type, character,
Mm-hmm.
and you also have barbarian in the way that it was, not too far from the first, example I was giving, but not only is it just like an uncivilized people, but they even, talked about like, their inability to speak, and they would make fun of folk they refer to as barbarians by making fun of their speech patterns, going
Mm-hmm.
ba 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 bar 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 bar, which is what
Mm.
that woman, like, that's all she
That
says is
woman
that ba
does.
ba
Yeah.
bar bar bar, and then of course, cute, we're on Barbary Street, where the house takes place. And then
Mm-hmm.
also, it's not an exact anagram, Airbnb and Barbarian, but
Yeah. Yeah, it's close.
close
It's
enough
close.
that it's
Yeah.
part of the whole, like, I'm sure it's like, oh, hey, actually, you're right. That is so cute. Let's put that in there. But like, I just like, again, just
Yeah.
small, cute little layers. Not necessarily that I'm not going to be
Yeah.
writing, the most in depth, peer reviewed research paper necessarily on this sort of situation. But I,
Mm-hmm.
again, I think I just appreciate just the cute, dumb little details for this. Um,
Yeah, I one of the things that like I think is it interesting, and I don't want to, I think it like go it flips back and forth between AJ fine, like he's running from the mother, and then he like makes it into the room with Frank. So he finds Frank, and then they cut back to Tess. Um, because she's made it to the gas station. She calls the cops. They're completely useless. And I won't spend too much time on that because I feel like it's one of those things where I'm like, did we there's a lot being said in this movie, which again like gives me like, I'm like, Zach Cregger, what what do you mean when you say you weren't trying to make a big statement or be political? You literally are tackling so many social justice issues in this movie. So for him to be just like, oh no, like I didn't want it to be like super deep. And it's like,
Bro,
what?
come on.
Like you even have a black cop not listening to a woman of color, which is a whole nother like subset of like issues that like happen in like, the police system. But like it's that is such a like such an interesting thing that like we're handling like, we're handling racism, we're handling women's issues, we're handling systemic like racism and issues there. Like it's really tackling a lot, and it feels quite exhausting. And for her to like go through this process of like the cops not listening to her, and like from the beginning it's just terrible to watch because she puts her hands on the window and he's like, ma'am, like remove your hands
Yeah, it's like,
like
is
from
he
the car.
disrespectful to her because she's a woman or because she looks poor or both? Because of course she's
Or
covered
because,
in like
yeah, or because she's a woman of color as
right.
well. Like there's so many things working against her, so you're just like, okay. But then, and then like they go back to the house and then they end up leaving, and I'm like, this feels like unnecessary extra time in this movie if you're like not trying to layer on a bunch of things. So that felt like weird to me, especially because it's like, okay, Tess, instead of, going back in the house, like I know, well, she went to get her keys, so she had to get her keys. So it's like, drive away, go somewhere, shower, find a different police station, and let them handle AJ. You've never met this man. Why? Why are
What
you
other
going
police
back?
station? I don't think that's
Like,
exactly how it works. There's jurisdictions.
no, no, no. You drive fucking far. Like who cares about AJ? And this is where Joel said people would disagree with me. I'm like, fuck that guy. Fuck him. He can die. I am safe now. I did my part. I tried. I tried. The cops didn't listen to me. So now I'm gonna drive my ass home or fly, whatever, shower, and then send somebody back there from, a police system that maybe will listen to me. Like, and that's gonna be that.
Hmm.
Um, and I like at some point, like you've got that AJ situation, like he's gonna be missing. It's his property. Like someone's gonna check it
He's
out
a he's at
at
least
some
some
point.
sort of A through D list celebrity, you know?
Yeah, and he's also a white man. So like someone's gonna go looking for him. So that whole like piece of Tessa's decision making of like, whether you go back, to your home or go somewhere else, I don't care. Just don't go back into the Barbary house. Don't
I
do it.
know. And
It
and
really
poor
bothered
Justin
me.
Long in the meantime, of course, finds Frank, right? And I like that he just
Oh,
immediately is like, "Oh, we're gonna get out of this together. I'll help you." And it's like, what?
yeah.
What of any of that makes you think?
What do you think is the situation
Yeah,
here?
I know.
Yeah. He lives here.
It's so bad.
The just all the tapes, the names of the tapes are
Mm,
just super disturbing. And this is like another like interesting thing with like, and that's why like the cop bit and like all of that's thrown in. I'm just like, this is a long movie already. Like and it's layered, it's so well layered, like throwing in like extra things felt like a lot to me. But when Justin Long's reaction to Frank's like tapes and him being like, "You're fucking disgusting." Like like what is he says like you're gonna go to jail
Yeah.
or something, or I'm gonna have or he says something he's absolutely disgusted. He has no idea that he is like within the same spectrum as this man. Like, yes, two totally different types of crimes, but like there's a spectrum of like the abuse and sexual assault and rape and all of those
Again,
things, and he doesn't even realize that he
it
lands on it.
escalates
Like,
from, Marcus to Keith to AJ to this
Marcus,
to Frank. And it just shows like,
but
I don't know, like it all starts somewhere. I don't know. Now, granted, I'm
oh
not saying
yeah,
that every
but
guy that says "milady" is going to, keep
milady, he
keep a
did not
fucking
say
sex
milady.
dungeon. Like, I get it.
Yes, exactly.
Um, or at least like a non-consensual sex dungeon. But yeah, yeah, no, yeah, no, I mean, I absolutely agree with a lot of what you're saying.
Yeah, I love it. Like I love him not even,
And Frank,
because this is a fictional character. But yeah, Frank is like, peace out.
like a
Bam. Like
coward.
I'm out of here. Yeah, like if I well, I mean, like, what is his other option is to like go to
Yeah,
prison, die in prison. Like he did what he had to do, I guess.
yeah. Oh my gosh. So we jumped around a lot, and we already got to,
Mm-hmm.
them trying to escape. Of course she comes back, for AJ. She manages to smash, the monster lady with her car pretty good. Still manages to
Mm-hmm.
get away.
Not good
Not
enough.
good enough. um and
Yeah.
then they make it to the water tower.
Yeah.
They meet the guy that's living there. Of course, he does his, oh, in 10 years, I've never seen this and this and this and this and this and this. And I was like, damn, dude, you were
Yeah.
about to be like a good guy through and through in the end. I mean, granted,
I love when she breaks through the wall like mid sentence. He doesn't even finish the
it's so
sentence.
fun. And then
It's
just
pretty good.
like they don't show it all the way. I'm sure budget reasons. But yeah, she rips off his arm and just beats him to death with it,
Mm-hmm.
which is pretty good. Takes some really good strength. So no wonder she survived the car and jumping off the water tower and all of that. Um,
Yeah. At that point, it's like a suspend, what is it? Suspend your
yeah.
disbelief. Like she's doing things that just you know, wouldn't happen.
Even Tess
Um
surviving that fall, even though, but she's pretty beat to shit
Tacit goes,
by the end.
there is no way that she would be able to be just like walking around. She gets shot, manages to climb up those stairs in the first place, then gets like pushed off of that water tower. I would have been happier had Tess not made it after all of that. If she didn't get that busted up, then it's like great, survive. But like maybe I feel like that was just way too
Hmm.
much. Like maybe don't shoot her and just have him push her off the roof. I don't know. Like it felt like way too much. It was feeling like Scream, whatever, Scream 5 and 6, where everybody's just getting stabbed 30 times and you're just like, oh,
Yeah,
they're
they'll,
good though.
they'll be fine.
They're just gonna run out of the
Yeah, don't even
hospital.
worry about it. I yeah, I hear you. And I mean, even yeah, just towards that end again, yeah, like we were saying earlier, he's still it was like, nope, I am just pure self survival, and I am gonna, yeah, just throw that lady off the fucking water tower. I don't even fucking care. And but then, yeah, again at the end of the same breath, just be like, I was trying to save you. Actually, no, I was trying to buy his time. Actually, you fell. Kind of like what you're saying
Yeah.
earlier, and it's
Yeah.
and then so that's why I'm just like, that's a pretty good fitting end. Is she just gets up and just fucking, just again, a good skull crush, a different type of skull crush. Give me some
Mm,
variety. I love it.
hot through the
Love
eyeballs.
it. And just until she just mashes his skull in, which was pretty great.
It's
It's
pretty
pretty
good.
good.
Yeah.
Gosh, can you believe?
He had that
Can you
coming.
believe that? If you're just like, oh Jesus, I read this like People magazine story. This dude's being like a fucking weirdo, and then the next thing is like, no, we found his brains mashed all over the place in some random spot in
Yeah.
Detroit
No idea what
next to
happened to
the
him.
body of this giant monster, because they're both just there in the street. So like they're gonna find all this
Yeah,
out.
that's
So
true.
it's only her that walks away, and
did you feel kind of bad for the monster woman when Tess has to shoot
No.
her?
No.
You know what? Okay, hear me out on this. I actually feel really bad for her. She's a victim
She is.
too. Like, she is. Like, and in the worst possible way. Like, she's a total monster because like there's nothing else for her to be. I felt bad for her. Like, and she's genuinely like cares about Tess. Like, she doesn't realize that she's terrifying and, like hurting her, seemingly so. So she's like, trying to get her to go back. And like, it's not, Tess shoots her in the face, which I totally would have done too. I wouldn't have had the same sympathy had I been in that situation. But like that monster woman is also, oof, not a good situation. And presumably she's been taking care of that old man this whole time because he has a little
Yeah.
bell
I
to ring.
I appreciate you bringing that up. Yeah. Because she is a victim. 100%.
Yeah. Like, she didn't choose that life. That's
She is the
terrible.
third
Oh,
most monstrous person in this movie. Probably, right? Between Frank and AJ?
yeah.
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 Hmm.
Yeah. And like, not by her own creation, but yeah. It like I think that's one of the things that got me the most on the
Hmm.
second watch was that I didn't feel bad for her the first watch. And then the second time I watched it, I was like, oh damn, that that
That does
sucks.
suck.
Like that, yeah, I'm like, that's pretty shitty. Um, but yeah, Tess makes it out, which is shocking. Um, it would have been too much of a downer if she didn't make it. I get it.
I think she's a
Um,
great final girl.
I think she's fine. She's
Yeah.
adequate. I really like the actress,
Me
so I'll
too.
say that. I think Tess makes a lot of decisions that I would not have made. Um, Again, maybe I'm not the most sympathetic, empathetic person, or maybe it's easier for me to say that I would leave that person behind if I, was in that situation, not having been in that situation. But if that was a man that I just met and I knew there was a monster in that house, I feel like there's a 95% chance I would not fucking go back. But I can't see
I
it.
don't know. I just like in one breath you're like I'm down to clown with this man, and then it's you know ma-
Says he's not a 6 foot monster woman.
yeah, that's true too.
Like that's a completely different
Oh, I'm just thinking
situation.
about
And he had earned her trust by that
did
point.
he?
She was ready. She was like smiling at the note, looking at the picture of his
I
ID,
know.
all cute before the interview. She was into it. She was
I
into it.
know.
Like, so Tess and I would have made that same mistake.
Yeah. Well,
That would have been
so there you
the
go.
common denominator
I think
there.
you and plenty of other
There's
people.
one thing we would have done the same. Yeah.
Any well, I think we did a roundabout way, but we landed at the end. We landed this plane. I can narratively figure this out.
We
Um,
did. I think we only skipped ahead once.
Anything else you want to touch base on before we hop into some boo scores?
Yes, two things.
Sure.
Only one tagline for this movie. I'm assuming that they chose this so that people wouldn't really know what was going on. Come for the night, stay forever. Pretty nondescript. I think they were trying to really keep things under wraps so that you had that element of surprise because it has quite a lot of twists and turns. And then I think my other thing that I'd be curious about, always going to encourage listeners to give their 2 cents. I'm curious to hear how much of a minority I am in thinking that Bill Skarsgård was not that bad. Like I'm really curious to know who is team Kyle and who is team Natalie on. And I think we agree on a lot of things. I'm not saying he's a perfect guy. I think there's a lot wrong there, but I don't view him as being as menacing as I think he was intended to be.
Mhm.
And also justice for Marcus.
Maybe. I know. I
Poor
came in real
Marcus.
hot about Marcus.
You did come in hot on
I
Marcus.
did.
Like, we have no idea what that situation is.
But he doesn't but he never calls again. So he must have, days, weeks went or however long she was under there went by, and I guess he didn't care that much. So who knows
Well, I mean, we don't know that. Maybe he called. The phone was
I
upstairs.
guess so. Yeah.
He could have.
Yeah.
He was like, damn, she's really good at ghosting.
You want me to go first with my boo, or would you like to?
I'll go first. I feel like you've gone first the last couple times. I always make you go first because I want to hear what you're going to
Go
say.
for it.
Okay. I thought a lot about this. I really, really genuinely enjoyed this movie. The only thing that I give it bad marks on is watching it this third time because I didn't have any element of surprise. I was like, watching it the first time is really an experience. And in the first view, 5 boos, absolutely 100%. I think it's so fun to watch, 5 boos. But because you only really have the rewatchability effect if you bring a new person into the mix and watch their reaction, and trying to find people to watch horror movies with me is so hard. Um, so I'm gonna land at 4 boos. I'm gonna give it 4 solid boos, which is high
We were
praise.
coming into this movie thinking, this will be a good one. This is something we're going to disagree on. Um,
Well, we disagreed on the nuances of things, but I think we both have a similar thought on like it's a great
yeah, but
movie. I would recommend this to anyone who likes
I land on
horror.
4 boos too. It's great. And
Nice.
I
Look at
do think
us.
that it wobbles definitely a lot in the last 20 minutes. I think it's hard because then I guess you think
Yeah.
of, and it's hard. I go back and forth on this just because I feel like a lot of horror movies fumble at the end, and
So many of them
none of them can
do.
hit that landing. But I think this one just here for some of the shock of it too, and just again a good last
Hmm.
minute head crush. Love it. Um, hmm,
Yeah. Well, and with this movie too, I think that's the other thing to be said. Like, if you go into a movie and it's fine and you're enjoying it and having fun, but there's a lot of things wrong with it, and then the third act is fine as well, you're like, great, like it's up. But when you start at like a 10, where is there to go? Like that's why I think this movie is hard for me because the beginning is so good that it could really only go down in that
yeah,
that end. So and even then, like that being said, I still think when you're watching it for the first time and you have no idea what's going to happen, it is a wild ride.
it's all
Absolutely.
great.
Yeah. Like when Justin Long pushes her off of that fucking water tower, the gasp, like it is, it is unreal. So yeah, that's great. We both agreed. 4 booths.
I give it 4 boos. Again, I don't know. I just this movie made me think a lot about being a guy watching this movie,
Yeah, it
and
should.
now I am not I'm not in Justin Long's position, nor am I in Frank's position, but it does give me
Thank goodness.
the opportunity to think a little bit about like, okay, well, where can I be like less creepy and less weird and more just well, I mean, okay, like I can be fun, creepy, and weird, but just not menacing and creepy and weird. I don't know, but just the movie makes me just
Yeah, like creepy and weird in like the spooky way, not in the like I'm a man and I might harm you way.
now. We're recording this in the year 2023. There was another movie that talked a lot about women and men interacting as well, and talking about, a little bit intro to feminism as well as I don't even want to downplay Barbie like that, but I'm talking about Barbie. It's like you have
Oh, I haven't
talking
seen
a
it.
lot about some really important stuff about feminism, and I think some people critique it being like, oh, it's just it's just intro to feminism. But I'm like, I don't know. I think that's really important stuff for a lot of people still to watch.
Some people need
Yeah, and that's
intro.
okay. Like, there's no need for us to shame ourselves, and but and
Mm.
it says a lot about men and the idea of men also being victims of the patriarchy in a lot of ways too.
Yeah.
And I am thinking, let's fucking Barbenheimer, that's out, that's old news, don't need it. Barbarian is really what is what's in right now. And here's my
Yeah.
proposal. And I really think we should
Okay.
figure out some sort of a government subsidized way to do this. But I really think that if you sit down and you show your receipts that you watched both Barbie and Barbarian and wrote, let's just say 3 to 5 pages just about what you've learned, I think that should count as a college credit for Intro to Women's Studies. What
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think
a good way to get people
I
in.
actually think people need to understand that sometimes messages don't come through unless they are entertaining. Like there have been women marching for decades, but there will still be men who watch Barbie or Barbarian and are like, oh, I get it now. Like, y'all should have been listening the whole fucking time, but like, do it any way you can. 101, get deep with it, take a college course, read a book, go march, whatever it takes, just do that. Whatever your style of learning is, great. Like I think that's fantastic. I still need to watch Barbie. I'm waiting for it to be like streaming for free. I'm not the girl to go wear pink at the theater. I actually thought about dressing up like full goth and going to see it. I thought that would be kind of fun. But yeah, this is a fun movie. I actually think Zach Cregger did a really great job writing like Tess as well. I don't know how much help there was in the room if women were involved in writing the screenplay or how much the actress had to say about her character. But I think the way that she looks at things, the way she questions things, the way that she's observing things is all very
Mhm.
real. Um, and I think there are many ways that men could be better and don't even realize. Like, for instance, if it's nighttime and you're on the same side of the street as a woman and you're approaching each other like from opposite directions, let's cross the street. Cross the street. It will make her night so much easier.
Yeah.
Like the amount of stress that you have when a silhouette of a man is approaching you in the dark, even if you're in the safest of neighborhoods, like just cross the street. Things like that, and it doesn't mean you're a bad man if you don't cross the street. You have every right to walk on that side of the street as well. But she's gonna feel a lot better if it's just easy for you to cross the street. Little things like that. And I wouldn't consider that chivalry. I would consider that just realizing your presence in a certain situation, no matter what an amazing guy you are. And you have a wife, maybe you're a father, maybe you're the world's most awesome son, but she didn't fucking know that.
Maybe he's the father of a daughter. Come on.
Yes,
Come on.
exactly.
Maybe
Yeah,
he's got
like
some
he
perspective
knows.
now. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, very very fun movie, highly
Love talking
recommend.
about it. I always think movies that we really like, sometimes I'm always worried that it's harder to talk about those. But gosh, I've just as fun talking about the movies we love. And honestly, we've loved all of these movies.
Yeah, we've only picked movies that we've loved, and I know we haven't made it to new releases yet, but y'all just need to be patient and let us talk about the movies that we love and why, and then maybe we'll get to some new releases. But I mean, who really wants to listen to us shit on a movie for 2 hours? Like, would you really want us to like sit and talk about The Nun 2 and how I haven't even seen it, but I'm assuming I'm not going to like it because I didn't like the first one. But like, would you really want us to just like talk about movies we don't like? If you want to hear us talk about movies we don't like, let us know.
Mm. I was
We can talk about movies we
I
don't like.
was 35 years old. It's earlier this year. I'm 36 now, but I was 35 years old when I learned that a habit is what a nurse wears. So Sister Act 2, Back in the Habit, is like the fucking strongest title for a movie I've ever heard in my life. That's so good.
You know, you know that were we watching The Nun together?
Maybe. Did I figure this out before? I love it.
We might, yeah, because we were talking on the headset, and you were like discovering it in real time because I said something about like it being a habit, and you were like, wait,
Yeah.
just slowly putting the pieces together, and then realized how amazing that title of Sister Act 2 Back in the Habit is. Like, that's whoever came up with that deserves some sort of Nobel
I
Peace
just fucking
Prize.
just dropped the mic and walked out of the room, or they did. I don't know,
Yeah,
but
Back in the
man,
Habit.
just done. You don't even. No one's gonna. Yeah, you're gonna have so much goodwill just coming into that movie, just knowing. And honestly, both those movies were good.
Yeah, I agree. I'm glad that you learned that, and I'm glad I got to listen to it in real time because that was really
Yeah.
special.
And then right now, as I forgot that you were there when I realized this, and now I'm telling you this story. I don't remember. You're like, yeah,
You know,
dude, I was there. I know. You're an idiot.
everyone's gonna just be like, I feel like I'm just listening to my grandparents have a conversation about just lack of
I
memory.
know. Well,
I
gosh, I think that about does it for Barbarian.
think we
I
did
I
it.
think
We
we were
did
very
it.
thorough. Gosh, yeah, I don't know. What a lot of fun. Really appreciate everybody is always, yeah, always bad at wrapping
Mm,
things up. Parting is, you know, sorrow, right? Yeah,
yeah.
sweet
Yeah.
sorrow.
I mean, we appreciate everyone who's listening for sure.
So go ahead, cancel those Airbnb bookings. Go to a hotel. Take care of yourself.
Find yourself a nice
Yeah,
Marriott.
find yourself, yeah, just like a nice Marriott. Find something that's got not only, that has both the locking mechanisms where you can like, close it and then you can
Hmm.
turn it and then you can do the thing where you pull. I don't know what that lock's called, but don't worry.
Get a deadbolt and the little latch thing. And you know what? We said that we didn't need an endorsement from Airbnb, but you know what? Marriott, Hilton, we'll take a hotel endorsement. Like we can represent there. We don't want people camping. So
Yeah,
hotels.
yeah, no, and bring your own deadbolts and hammer it on me yourself. Just take care of yourself.
Well, now we just lost the endorsement.
Hunker down. Don't answer the door. Just hide under that bed and just don't move. And yeah, take care of yourselves, everybody. 3, 2, 1, ghost.
Thanks for listening to our episode on Barbarian. If you're enjoying our podcast and want more Natalie and Kyle, you can give us a follow on Instagram at 321GhostPod. We would also appreciate if you left us a killer review on whichever platform you're listening. Gestures like these will help us grow our podcast and maybe land us our dream hotel endorsement. You can send us an email at 321ghostpod@gmail.com to share any comments, concerns, or recommend a movie you'd like to hear us chat about. We'd also love to hear your thoughts on the movies we've covered. Join us next week when we discuss Drag Me to Hell and continue to sing Justin Long's praises. Thank you again for listening, and I sure hope Tess got that refund. 3, 2,